Hey, Emma,
Yes, Madeline.
what do you call the little fibs you tell to get out of gym class, like having a cold or a bloody nose?
I don't know. What do you call it?
Lies of PE. Hello and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your... You're kidding me. This game is 90 hours? I would have played it if it wasn't 90 hours. Host Madelyn.
I'm your totally human host, Emma.
And thanks for tuning in to this week's show. That was very like, knights always tell the truth and rogues always lie. I'm the very human.
Yeah.
There. I liked that. And this week on the show, we're talking about Kowloon High School Chronicle and Lies of P.
Heck yeah, we are.
I get fooled into thinking I've heard of Kowloon High School Chronicle when I've heard of Kowloon Knights, the studio.
Yeah. Kowloon, the walled Chinese city, right? That used to have the
No
highest
relation.
population density. This game's not about Kowloon.
Yes, it is a translation, or a localization, a renderization of 9 dragons.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of griping on Reddit about it being called Kowloon for some specific reason. I don't know why.
You know, there underneath your school, there is a big area with a lot of walls. So it doesn't have a very high population density, I don't think, but you could stretch it.
So Kowloon High School Chronicle, our old game of the week, is a 2004 PlayStation 2 game from Shout Design Works, originally published by Atlas. But for us, and probably for the vast majority, if not all people listening to this podcast, you wouldn't have really been able to encounter it until 2020, when it was localized and brought west for the first time for the Switch, and then in 2022 they released PlayStation 4 and Windows version. And that version was a sort of a remaster, I mean, not remake, but like to some extent had to be remade from Toy Box, published by Arxis Works.
Yes, they moved everything into Unity. Were able to reuse some assets, and some had to recreate some of the assets. So, there was like an expansion that was released in Japan like a few years after the original. The remaster doesn't include any of that content because apparently it would have doubled the workload of making the remaster.
Yes, 2006 they released, it's not called Kowloon High School Chronicle exactly in Japan, but that Recharge.
Yeah.
Had a bunch of epilogues and bonus content.
So it's also a spin-off of a series called Tokyo Majin Gakuen Denki, or Tokyo Wizard Academy Fantasy, if you're going to be really literal with translating it.
Yeah, well, we all like our literal translations, Emma.
Yeah. Which none of the main games have ever been localized. Only this and one other spin-off have been brought over here from the series. So only 2 of the spin-offs, none of the main games. But all of them directed by Shuho Imai, and all of them under his genre of like young adult fantasy is what he calls them.
They're, moderately popular in Japan. I mean, Kowloon High School Chronicle is a bit more of a cult classic, but the series overall, moderate popularity, the kind of thing that, I mean, as you'll see when we describe this, it's a bit of a Persona-like. And so in Famitsu reviews, gets sort of thrown around in that way. Not that it's on the level of Persona's popularity now.
It's more specifically, I think it's easier to relate it to Persona 1 and 2 than it is to 3, 4, and 5.
Yes. So, Kowloon High School Chronicle is a sort of Indiana Jones goes to high school kind of situation. Undercover Indiana Jones goes to high school.
Apparently the game does not ever make this explicit, so there is some heated debate on whether you're an adult undercover as a high schooler, or if you're like a super high schooler who also works as a treasure hunter. So
like an Encyclopedia Brown.
Yes, that's up to your discretion, I guess.
Let's hope that you're a super child.
Yes, that would be good.
This is a visual novel with, typical visual novel in a school elements. Anyway, it's a visual novel, but it's also other things. So Kowloon High School Chronicle is part high school visual novel, part adventure puzzle solver in a dungeon, and part dungeon crawler. It is turn-based combat, although it feels like action. It's like somewhere weirdly in between.
You take turns, but then I think your attacks are sort of like you aim and shoot while you're attacking.
So basically, it does, whenever I get a game that feels like it has one half that's this genre and one half that's this genre, I'm like, well, we could have come up with that. To remind myself of Kowloon High School Nights anytime I'm like, I don't know, do these two things make sense together? Making a mashup.
Kowloon High School Nights? Did you just say?
Did I say Kowloon High School Nights?
You sure did.
That's what I mean. Kowloon High School Chronicles. Kowloon High School Nights is is when you're in the dungeon.
Yeah. So I guess unlike modern Personas, in the way it's most unlike it is like a linear experience. You're not managing your time in the same way. You have, your visual novel segments during the day where you're getting to know different characters, and then later at night you have your dungeon crawling sections that you go through until like you unlock the next like story thing, and then the story thing unlocks the next dungeon thing. So it's like a linear progression versus like, today I'm gonna go dungeon crawling, today I'm gonna hang out with my friend, right? So it's a little simpler in that way.
There's relationship management to be doing.
Yes.
But time management, not so much.
I think the most fascinating part of this game is
You almost said Kowloon High School Nights, didn't you?
No, I was trying to think of a word other than this game, but I did not succeed. Is the sort of unique dialogue system that they have, which is borrowed from...
This is so funky, by the way.
It's borrowed from the main system, main game, and it's called the emotion input system. And so while you're talking with someone, every once in a while this wheel will show up on the screen that has like 4 different directions, and each direction has 2 levels. I do not remember all of them. There's like...
Oh, I can tell you all of them.
Okay, tell us all of them.
The 4 basic ones are joy, amity, friendship, right? Cold, and somber. Or if you want to go more extreme, you can do love, hot, anger, grief, or nothing.
Yeah.
And also not respond.
Yeah. It's unclear to me if they're in English also in the Japanese one on this thing, or if they're Japanese characters. I was watching one video that was like, if you put like the hot character, you're probably gonna get more from it as like a kanji and understand what that means when you're doing it in Japanese. But when it's in highly stylized English letters and says hot, it's a little bit hard to understand what the actual emotion is. There was this fun like perspective article on Siliconera that was like, it made me feel like a shy teen. That's like, you're transferring in, and like in that first few days they just didn't understand how this wheel worked, and did like totally inappropriate answers for many different characters, but felt like they were like fumbling their way through initial interactions, and then like they got more comfortable with the wheel and were able to like chat with people like a normal person.
I read this article too, which, by the way, is a testament to there's not a lot of writing on Kowloon High School Chronicle.
There really is not, no.
Did not, my usual, as I say on the show often, my usual methodology for researching for the show is typing in game title, Polygon.
Mm-hmm.
Game title, Kotaku. Game title, Eurogamer, right? Like, and just seeing what comes up. Game title, Vice game. Oh, maybe not anymore.
Yeah.
Everyone, it's your responsibility to download the Boys Are Back in Town article. Can I ever have that lost?
You have to do it too, Madelyn.
I did.
Good.
I have a PDF.
Good.
I am absolutely not going to play the Boys Are Back in Town again.
Nice archiving.
It's crucial. Anyway, not relevant here. But I read that article on Silicon Era too. And like, I don't know. Like, I really appreciate that reviewer's perspective because they really got into the role play of it all and like they almost sold me on it. But I think that most players are maybe not going to feel that generous about messing up when talking to their best girl.
Yeah. Kowloon High School Chronicle is not generous with its explanations, is sort of the impression I got.
A lot of friction in this game.
You know, they're there, the explanations. It just probably requires you to do more digging through the menus than you're used to from modern games.
And there's already a lot of text in those menus.
There's also, like, again, to sort of be for Persona, like, if you're trying to bond with a character, usually you just want to pick the thing that sort of matches their vibe, right? I watched a Thor High Heels video that had...
The only video. That's not true. There were
like two. There were like two videos. And it's like with your bro friend, you just want to be like, Amity. Yeah, Amity. Amity, bro. And that's like the best way to bond with them, basically, is to just sort of match the vibe of the character rather than like creating your own personality or anything like that.
That is the challenge of creating an effective... Maybe we talked about this, I think, on the podcast where we were talking about these kind of conversation systems. That is the challenge of creating a visual novel that wants you to role play, right?
Yeah.
Is that, you know, there's a right, as soon as there's a right answer, it becomes say the thing the character wants to hear.
Yeah, this has been sort of in discussion on Twitter again recently with like Persona 3 Reload, where it's like, yeah, dude, you should totally try to date your teacher. Give me more affinity points, please.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great idea to me, Kenji. But yeah, there's a little bit of like, you just sort of want to max out that character's bond. Because when you do, they can come with you into the dungeon as sort of a party member. You don't like give them commands or anything like you would in a lot of turn-based RPGs. They just sort of like, they have like passive buffs and like will do their own like little actions during battles and stuff like that. So it's a little bit different. They're not quite like party members. They're just like sort of vibing with you in the dungeon was the impression I got.
I'm going to take a minute for Madelyn's lore corner, which is not too much lore, but just realizing that I'm not sure that we actually explained the premise of this game.
We did. You're a treasure hunter. You go into high school. I'm pretty sure we said at the start.
But I just want to make sure that we're clear about it.
Okay.
Right? So you are a treasure hunter of apparently indeterminate age.
Yeah.
And like locations here are important. I had to double check this location like 7 times to make sure that it was correct because it did not make sense to me. And that's just actually how it is. So you're a treasure hunter. You are now pretending to be a transfer student at a high school in Shinjuku, in Tokyo, because there is an Egyptian pyramid, an upside-down Egyptian pyramid, underneath the school where there are monsters and also treasure.
Yeah. Also,
the student council might be evil.
Yeah. That's just classic.
Yeah.
I think all Japanese student councils could or could not be evil. Sort of
all Japanese student councils definitely have an alignment.
Yes.
Yeah, this game, you know, you can tell because there's a student council in it. This game is structured somewhat like an anime.
Yes.
In that each chapter has its, you know, opening, closing movie. And, like, it's sort of like an episode.
The opening is quite charming, honestly. Yeah. I watched it. Very Cowboy Bebop vibes, says someone hearing jazz for the second time.
Might be generous. Like Cowboy Bebop Amity. Cowboy Bebop hop.
Yeah.
This, as I alluded to at the beginning, this game is available for like $20 on Switch. I thought about getting it. I was not super inclined to purchasing a game because I am at like hour 80 in my giant RPG right now. But in going into this, I was not for sure aware of how long this game was. I was like, oh, it's only $20. It's on the Switch. Maybe I will get it. But it's this year is just the theme of like Madelyn is scared of these PS2 and older era games.
You see, though, you've got this long trip coming up where you got to bring your Switch, and maybe you want some options, right? Like a 90-hour 2004 RPG where you have to dig through menus to find tutorials.
See, I am contemplating it for before my array of many trips, because I will be on every coast in the span of like a week, so I am certainly going to need some things on the Switch.
Yeah.
But when I saw this game was like 75 hours minimum, I was like, and when everything was like, it's an adventure game and it doesn't really always really explain to you like how to open doors. I was like, oh, there's so many things about this game that check boxes of things that I like. And there's a lot of people being like, you're going to love this game online. Like, what a hidden gem. But, it's 75 hours and it came out in 2004.
Yeah, it's been, since I had an eye on it when it released in English, and it's just sort of been, like, percolating in my big bubble of games that I would like to get around to eventually.
Yeah.
But not quite there yet to that one.
I'm intrigued by it. And again, it is yet another example of a game that's like, oh, if this was a game that came out in 2016, maybe I would have gotten it, But just the combination of it being so long and it being 20 years old has me too scared. It's not clear to me why they decided to release this.
In English?
Yeah.
Well, they were making a remaster anyway, I guess. And maybe it seemed like a good chance. I don't know. Arc System Works published it worldwide, the remaster. But when the remaster came out, I Google translated a Famitsu article interview with the director, and he's like, I'm thinking about a sequel. Like, he's planning it out in his head, but has to do a lot of research for it. So it's possible he's just like, yeah, let's return to this and let's see if it has like a market worldwide, or maybe we should localize the sequel,
Well, not looking great then, huh?
Yeah, certainly on the worldwide front. I don't know how well it did in Japan.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about worldwide. Because it is remarkable how little writing or videos or anything there is about this game. Which is crazy because, like, people love Persona, obviously.
They love modern Persona, though.
I know, but they just have to get tricked
into thinking it is, yeah.
Right? Like, that's what's so fascinating to me. It's like, it seems like the reason you would want to re-release this game now is because everybody loves Persona. They're re-releasing all of the, like, well, you'd have to tell me, where does 3 fall in the Persona spectrum? Like, obviously this game is not like Persona 5.
3 is what established the modern conventions that 4 and 5 follow.
But, like, if I had only played Persona 3 and then I went to play this, how would I feel?
It's interesting because I think that, 3 has like the dungeon crawling is like a procedurally generated thing where you just sort of go up floors and they're different each time. And there's not much really happening in Tartarus. This one, you're first person for one thing. First person walking through it, like looking at things. There's puzzles in this. It's not just turn-based combat. There's item crafting. Sometimes you have to craft things to solve puzzles. So there's like solution building in that way. So I can feel, seems like they could both be tedious in totally different ways, if that makes sense.
It does. But see, that's what I'm saying, is that people are jazzed about the Persona 3 remakes. People are just jazzed about this sort of like, I'm a Tokyo high schooler fighting demons in a dungeon. And it just seems like this should have been a shoo-in to ride some of that wave. And those games are also a bajillion hours long. It'd be one thing if the Persona games were a tight 30. But
there are rumors that they might be doing remasters for the 2 duology for Persona. So that's the time for this to have like a phoenix rising from the ashes, I think. When people get really into Persona 2, well, then what?
Like the game Phoenix Rising?
Yeah, the game Phoenix Rising, which in fact did not rise like a phoenix, I'm pretty sure.
But yeah, it was so interesting to me because I came into researching this being like, oh yeah, like obviously this is a capitalized on Persona, and then like they did not do that even a little bit.
Yeah.
There was no writing about this game anywhere.
I've also reading this like Famitsu, this like 2020 Famitsu interview with the director. I also thought it was funny. They asked him a lot. That's like, it's really like your bro best friend characters that are like the most popular and enduring with the fan base above mostly men, which I thought was really interesting. He was just like, yeah, I don't know. I'm happy about that. I went to an all-boys school, which was funny to me. Which, from my understanding, is like, in the Japanese fan base at least, they do not like the best bro characters in Persona, usually. The popularity polls, they are down there. They're not loved. But apparently, like, the bro guy from this game is, like, pretty enduring, even beyond, like, the game in, like, the doujin-type communities, which, like, good for him, I guess. Amity,
yeah.
bro.
Amity. Amity. This game did have sort of various spin-offs. There were some audio dramas, the soundtrack got released. I thought this was kind of cool. They released a screenplay for it that has all the branching paths. They basically released it as like a choose-your-own-adventure book, which I think more of these games should do. That's kind of sick.
It is kind of sick.
A very old-school mobile phone game where it's like you could talk to 2 of them a day, and if they like you, they'll give you a mobile phone wallpaper. So quaint.
That's cute.
And even quainter, an adventure game on DVD. Like
I forgot. There's a whole in the game of Kowloon High School Chronicle. Yes. There is another game inside of it that is also quite long and does have things like grinding, which, for what it's worth, Kowloon High School Chronicle, because of its format, is pretty much devoid of, like, grinding that we talked about before. Because you're not...
the mythical... I guess it's not really an RPG, though. So that's... I mean, it is, but it isn't.
Sort of is. You can assign points to yourself.
That's
once
true.
you figure out that you can do that.
Your like, personality character stat system is your report card.
Yeah.
Which also, I thought it was crazy that they were like, if your score in history, I think, isn't high enough, you can't read the hints to how to solve the puzzles.
You're too stupid.
You're too dumb for a hint. Like, who made that choice?
It's fun. That's funny, though. I like that. Good to know. When I play this, I'll make sure to put my points in history.
Seriously. But overall, this seems like a game that released at least before its time, in some ways. I mean, I know it's moderately popular in Japan. I just feel like had this game released, not in its exact form, but not in full modern Persona either, but had this game released in like 2018, I feel like it could have been huge.
I don't know. Could have gone either way. It's an interesting game because, you know, we've compared it to Persona, but it's very much feels like its own beast in the same breath, right? In the way that it's put together, I guess.
But in some ways that's good, right? You don't want, well, we'll talk about something that's not this in the second half of the episode, but like in some ways you want to be like taking a genre and riffing on it in a way that is not exactly the same. probably.
Right. They're in Shinjuku because they hadn't invented Shibuya yet in Persona 5.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Important to note that. But yeah, this was gonna bop around in my like, ooh, maybe.
Yeah, that's where it's been living since it released for me.
If it was like 50 hours, it'd go higher up the list.
I've got like, I've got other older games that like I've got to get through first,
Yes.
And then I can get back to this. Well, any last thoughts, or shall we? I don't know. Shall we puppeteer our way over?
Nice. No, I think this is cool. I think there are so many cool ideas here, and it's a shame that I can't get myself jazzed enough to actually play it.
Yeah. All right, Lies of P. It's a 2023 Souls-like game from NeoWiz and Round 8 Studio. Lies of P, by the way, double meaning. Because Lies of P for Pinocchio, your main character, right?
I got that one.
And also in Korean, because this is a Korean game company, P is blood. So it's also Lies of Blood, if you wanted to.
That's interesting.
Yes. I knew this because I saw Gene Park tweet about it around the time it was released. It was sort of interesting to me to like see that like, oh, it's like a double meaning, and like in some ways I get the urge to make fun of the title Lies of P, but I did start thinking like, didn't we just get over this with Japanese games and making fun of their weird titles? Like, yeah. Let's not regress now.
Lies of P is one of those games that I kept seeing people talking about online, but I didn't actually know what it was.
It's the Pinocchio Souls-like, Madelyn.
Which is, again, I just have to say that a Pinocchio Souls-like sounds like a Talk This mashup.
It's extremely smart, I think.
I do love that everywhere talked about this. They're very careful to say it's based on the Italian novel The Adventures of Pinocchio by Carlo Collodi, which, by the way, I assumed for whatever reason that the story of Pinocchio was more than 150 years old, and I was wrong. Just assumed it was like a folk tale.
No.
But this is from 1883.
It is public domain, though.
Sure. But they're everywhere. This took me a while to understand, because at first I saw this and I was like, oh, this is a novel that is like some kind of like spin on the Pinocchio story, and that's why they're... No. It is just the story of Pinocchio. That everyone is just being very careful to make it very clear that it is not based on the Disney property.
Yes. If you want more thoughts on Pinocchio, I think like a couple of months ago there was a Jacob Geller video where he did talk about Pinocchio as like a cultural artifact and the different interpretations, including a little bit on Lies of P. So, if you're a Pinocchio head.
Remember how 2 weeks ago when we talked about Onimusha, I was like, why don't we have games about American mythology? Or like, non-Greek European mythology. I take it back. I don't want it. I can't take it seriously.
Why?
People like Lies of P. This is not really a diss at Lies of P. People like it. It seems like it's a like decently done take. But like, I get it now. I get why we don't have this, because Disney has taken all of that and made it impossible to do.
I guess so. I don't know if I've watched all of Pinocchio, the Disney movie.
I don't know that I have either, but I have run around in Monstro's stomach in Kingdom Hearts, which is just as much, just as good.
Maybe I'd watch the Guillermo del Toro Pinocchio, and maybe it cured me, so I can take Pinocchio seriously again.
Or like this game feels very like late aughts, early 2010s, like very Once Upon a Time, right?
Sure. For what it's worth, it's not. I mean, it is very Bloodborne in its like vibes, I guess.
Which, by the way, loved the interview with the developers before it came out, where they were like, "That wasn't intentional."
I mean, they're very transparently like, this is a Souls-like game, though.
I know, but they have a weird interview where, like, there's, like, a trailer and everyone's like, this has Bloodborne vibes. And they're like, we didn't mean for it to have Bloodborne vibes, but we love Bloodborne.
They did, I did think it was very interesting, like, they're very explicit that they're, like, it's based on the Belle Epoque style, right? Because I watched a very frantically edited interview from GameSpot where they like cut every 2 seconds to a different camera for some reason. It made it very hard to watch. But they were saying, they were like, what's with the steampunk vibes? And they were like, well, there's no steam, right? It's not steampunk. Nothing's steam-based. And so they were very explicit. They were like, it's this like Belle Epoque period, which is mostly a French period, apparently, like between the 1870s to like the start of World War I, when things were like going great. So it's like they took that and then like sort of made it again like post-apocalyptic in that way. And also there's puppet automatons, of course, during that period as well.
Yeah, historically.
Yeah.
So in Lies of P, you play as Pinocchio in the city of Krat, and Pinocchio is more of a robot puppet, sort of, in this world, rather than a boy carved of wood.
Yes.
And all these robot puppets are fueled by a power source called Ergo. Is that Cogito Ergo Sum?
Yeah.
Do you think?
I think so.
Yeah. Neat. So the society created all these puppets to be slaves, basically. They're basically like iRobot puppets in that they're not supposed to lie or attack humans.
Yeah.
But one day they do revolt and slaughter a bunch of people. So Pinocchio kind of like awakes in the middle of this, and he's got to find Geppetto, who's his creator and like the creator of all the puppets, many of the puppets, to like stop this puppet revolt. You do have a Jiminy Cricket, although its name is Gemini.
But pronounced Jiminy.
Is it really?
Yes.
Love that.
It's extremely funny. They do spell it Gemini, but they all say Jiminy.
Legally distinct Jiminy Cricket.
Yes.
Also really bold. So there's this robot puppet thing, but there's also like a virus that causes petrification in people. Like bold, I have to say, bold to release like a pandemic game in 2023.
Sure.
Strong. I realize obviously this game would have been in production before that.
Yeah.
But it's strong.
Key to the Souls-like vibe, especially if you're going like classic FromSoft vibes, right, is that it has to be like the world's dying, right?
Yeah.
And they do very much lean into that in this game.
Anyway, I won't fully spoil, but, eventually you find Geppetto, you figure out what's caused the puppets to go mad, and there's multiple endings at the end.
Yes, so the ending is impacted a little bit on specific choices, but mostly based on throughout, like, doing various side quests and going through the main story, you will frequently have opportunities to either tell the truth or lie to a character. And so the more you lie or express your own, like, not do the things that a puppet is supposed to do, you become more human feeling, and that it impacts basically the ending that you can get. And it also makes the cat at Hotel Krat like you more as the game progresses.
Which is deeply important.
It's kind of cool, honestly, because you cannot pet the cat at the start because it does not like you, because you're a freaky puppet.
Good use of petting the animal.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to be creative now with your petting.
I do have to, I don't think this is really a spoiler, I just want to laugh at it, that the very end ends with an Avengers style.
The sequel bait,
This is
yeah.
so funny to me.
Extremely good, honestly. Love it.
Like,
They are
yeah.
releasing DLC for the game based on the whale and theme park type stuff from Pinocchio. I think is what the DLC is going to be for, that sort of underwater vibe. So it did well for them. They did good.
But yeah, the fact that they were like, and now we're going to another beloved character.
You know what? It would rule though. Okay, game playing as the mysterious character they introduce at the end. Come on now.
I don't think you could do it as a Souls-like, though. I think it would have to be
Why not?
Well, because you'd be missing the opportunity for it to be like a party-based RPG.
I see. Well, anyway.
Like, don't get me wrong. It would be baller for this character to be doing Souls combat, but I think you'd have a missed opportunity to incorporate the iconic characters that accompany this character.
We're really speaking around it now.
I'm doing it because I encourage you listeners to take a guess, if you aren't already aware of what this is, about what I'm talking about.
So a couple unique little quirks of Liza P's combat system. There's like a weapon sort of crafting system where you can take sort of bases and blades and like create different weapons out of them by taking them apart and then putting them back together again. You have like a mechanical arm that you can upgrade and replace, and can have gadgets and different types of things to give you more sort of stuff to do in combat.
Barrett should be able to do this in Final Fantasy VII, by the way. Just saying. Anyway.
No, Madelyn, Tifa has the grappling hook. It's her iconic grappling hook.
Yeah, but the arm, he should be able to swap his arm out.
He does swap his arm out.
But like for more things.
Okay. You also, like, you can build up the Fable arts, which, you know, as you deal damage and block well, you can use like a special ability to deal high damage or have other effects. And there's also a weapon durability system type thing where you have to manage like how sharp your sword is during combat as well. So you have to make sure you get space, then you can sharpen the sword on your arm, and then you can go back to attacking. Just to add a little bit more of like the push and pull, I guess, is sort of the intention there.
Liza P got like pretty great reviews across the board. It's another of these games, and look, this is something the industry is going to have to like reckon with eventually, right? Is that we can't just keep making games that are truly copies of like Bloodborne and Sekiro and whatever forever. Now, the storytelling structure here is different. Yeah. That is sort of the thing that is notably different here, is that while, you know, Dark Souls games and like Elden, you know, any of these FromSoft games tend to have like a very esoteric sort of happening in the background, happening in item descriptions kind of story. Lies of P is a linear Souls. It's not Elden Ring, and has sort of a much more overall traditional storytelling structure, although there's a lot of stuff that you can kind of dig into that might be kind of between the lines. So that's different. But in terms of how the game plays, the combat style, or that sort of thing, most of the praise in these reviews is you could have told me that FromSoft made this and I would believe you.
I think there's sort of a combination of things happening here of like, one, yes, there's a lot of you know, playing in familiar genres from the game industry. I also think maybe some idolization from software is what fuels those comparisons as well.
Yep.
But like, you know, you think other medias have this, where one particular type of story gets popular and then you get a bunch of them and some of them are good and some of them aren't. It's just sort of a natural thing that happens in a commercially driven entertainment business.
Oh, I just mean and I think that some of this comes back to the gigantic, long development cycle of games. But it is interesting to me that there is no real competitor or peer to FromSoft in what they are doing. And certainly no competitor or peer that... I mean, like, you know, obviously it seems like, based on the reviews here, that NeoWiz and Round 8, like, could be on that level. Could be the South Korean FromSoft, right? But they have one game.
Yep.
So, you know.
Apparently only in development for about 3 years, though, which much healthier development cycle than a lot of AAA stuff.
So all this to say, it's interesting to me that, and maybe we just haven't hit the point, but I don't know, like, when did, like, Bloodborne is not new.
No. People really want them to put Bloodborne on PS5.
So it's interesting to me that, I mean, when did Bloodborne come out? Bloodborne has to be a decade old, right?
2015, so not quite.
So almost. But so in the past 9 years that no one else has built up a body of work that is even close. Or that does anything that when anyone brings up these games that they mention anyone else.
Sure.
It's hard to in games. I don't know. I can't think of too many other genres in games where there is one studio that is so dominant. I mean, obviously you could throw it back to like old school Square, perhaps, but that's now. It's interesting. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
And I sure hope the folks at From never want to make another type of game ever.
Hey, they just made Armored Core 6.
That's true. But, like, that's part of a series, at least. I sure hope they never want to make anything new.
Sekiro was slightly new, for what it's worth.
Yeah, but now even, like, Sekiro gets thrown in with the rest of it. I know it was slightly new, but it's close enough that it gets lumped in with the rest of it. I want to see them make a visual novel.
You know what? I do too. It does, you know, it is fun. Studios tend to make the same type of games because they build skill sets, right?
Right.
And then those skill sets can be applied to making even better versions of those types of games. But it is fun when studios pull like a Hi-Fi Rush, obviously.
Yeah.
Because theoretically, you could take those skills and apply them to different genres.
You know what? FromSoft would make a dope rhythm game.
I guess it's sort of a rhythm game.
Rhythm games.
Yeah, yeah. It's time. Miyazaki. That's his name, right?
Yeah. Think about it.
Poison Swamp rhythm game?
Ooh.
There was just an interview with him where he's like, yeah, I intentionally designed a Poison Swamp in the Elden Ring DLC because I was reflecting on my love of Poison Swamps. Good luck, players.
This game was a one-day Game Pass exclusive. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah. I don't have Game Pass right now, or else I would have played it. Best deal in gaming. Not sponsored.
They'll give us a retroactive sponsorship one day. I always think it's very interesting when I get to read people like whining about like a very specific mechanic in a game.
Yeah.
The dodge was quite controversial until it was patched.
Yes, this is another one which again isn't like unique to this genre or any game, but they did make a lot of patches for this that I think ultimately made it a little bit smoother and easier by the end.
Yeah. That includes that at first you had to fight through several bosses with like an incredibly basic dodge roll before you even had the ability to upgrade your dodge so that like you can dodge from the ground, for instance. And in not too long after release patch, they changed it so that you have that dodge from the ground level of dodge from the beginning.
Probably good.
Yes, probably for the best. Now, listeners, I know you're wondering one thing. How does Pinocchio's nose play into this? Which I do have a quote from lead producer Ji-won Choi that I want to share. Which is, we decided against allowing Pinocchio's nose to grow because we wanted to make him look cool as opposed to silly.
The loading screen, however, is his nose growing.
He did go on to say, but we do want to implement the idea somewhere. We can't say we have a solid plans at this point. This is pre-release.
And that's why games shouldn't fully get rid of loading screens.
Yeah, you get to have fun little things.
I know, yeah.
And we all want to be able to check our phone.
Yeah. I want to watch Pinocchio's nose grow and search Pinocchio's nose grow Y on my phone at the same time.
It's a pain when I have to keep pausing scenes to give him my live reaction.
Yeah, that's true.
I need to have those loading screens.
I think it'll be interesting how the more Korean games coming over to the West, especially ones with like, there's some coming over now that have like big platform support, like PlayStation keeps promoting Stellar Blade, for example. Both on like the Lies of P thing, and another one I thought was interesting is like there's a sword in it, again from Gene Park, that's apparently called a hwando, the two dragon swords, which is like a traditional Korean sword. But if you go online, everyone will call it a katana. It's the katana. Which it'll just be interesting, right?
Yes. Will we have to go through... Presumably we won't have to go through the same level of...
The Korean gaming industry does have its own unique problems. You can look into like there was an article on like the Black Myth Wukong developers a little while ago. Basically just like it's the case here too, but unfortunately very rampant sexism in a lot of the gaming companies over there. But it still will be interesting to see in our world where gaming press is totally gutted anyway, how that all shakes out as we get more Asian games that aren't Japanese over here. And I hope that we'll be able to sort of balance that critical response to those.
Well, is it time for the mash, the monster mash?
Ready to mash these things.
Okay. So, we're really dealing with a lot of different pieces, right?
Pinocchio.
Yes, Pinocchio, but also ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
But also Japanese high school.
You know, there's a similar sort of thing. You have your home base in Lies of P, that's Hotel Krat, where there are various different characters that you can build relationships with by doing various slightly esoteric sometimes things. You have to dress up in like several different outfits for one of them. You have to slowly bond with the cat over time by lying more. Mm-hmm. So and that's sort of like you've got the home-based relationships building in both of these, right? So I think we definitely have that.
Absolutely. And we need to have something that is like, I realize that Pinocchio is not mythology, but we need to have like folktale or mythic or something else that exists. Because like there's like Japanese folkloric monsters that are in the pyramid, I think.
Okay, you're a puppet robot thing.
Okay.
And you have like either like you've escaped your creator, or your creator is like, it's time for you to socialize, child. And so you end up like enrolled in high school, masquerading as a real human.
Maybe you can be a Bunraku puppet.
Sure.
If we're doing Japanese, I'm trying to do something that's not Pinocchio. Like
it doesn't have to be Pinocchio specifically, but yeah. And that maybe translates into like having like a limited ability, or initially like limited ability to express yourself because you're still figuring out how you talk to people that aren't like your creator, right? And at the same time, there's something real suspicious going on at this school, right? People, like in Kowloon, people are going missing. Transfer students are dying. There's all this stuff happening in the background of Kowloon High School Chronicle that we didn't fully go into, but bad things happen at this school.
This game, to be clear, is 800 hours long. Only so much we can talk about in 20 minutes.
And so you end up having to, like, figure out what's going on, and we could have, like, the science and the mysticism, like, come together, right? And go from there. I don't know. Build off of it. I come up with the premise. What's going on?
Okay. So I like this premise. So probably the home base, I mean, much like in Kowloon, the home base is at the school, and like, but it seems like maybe we've moved the adventure game part of Kowloon perhaps into the school world. Like, the school world is visual novel and some, adventure game running around looking for clues.
Sure.
Solving puzzles. But then the question becomes, what is the other world gameplay like? And it's here that we are faced with maybe this is so stupid. Maybe it is a rhythm game.
Sure. Why?
Like, in some way, it's like, I'm like, okay, how do I bring something like, but it's turn-based, but like action where you have to aim, and it's Souls-like, and in some ways, there's like a funky rhythm game that hits those buttons.
Okay.
But I don't know that I like that. But what I'm struggling with is that I don't think that having a game that is part visual novel, part Souls-like, look, I could be wrong. That could be the exact niche that some people are looking for, but it feels like it kind of splits the baby a little bit.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Okay, maybe this doesn't solve that issue. Maybe what you're doing, and I don't know where you're doing it or like where it is, but like you're looking into like the origins of these puppet creatures. Like, there's like this urban myth going around the school that you're undercover in, that like some people are actually these puppet robots, right?
Okay, yes.
So you join like the mystery solving team or whatever to like investigate the origins of these things, while also keeping your own identity as a puppet robot a secret, hence having to lie to them a lot.
Is this like what is the game where they're high schoolers and they all kill each other?
Danganronpa? You don't have to kill each other in this one. But no. The robot in that is very clearly a robot.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I like that. What I'm trying to capture for the other gameplay is... Okay, so here's what I want to capture. Is there a gameplay element that isn't Souls-like combat, but that would require you to have that same get good kind of spirit? You know, the idea that like,
a rhythm
we're going to do
game,
this multiple times until we figure it out.
A rhythm game, I guess.
I mean, unfortunately, yes, right? I can't believe that my big takeaway from this episode for everyone is that that rhythm games are really Souls-likes and vice versa.
Maybe it's like a rhythm game and also sort of like I don't know. You could do something like sort of like rock paper scissors-y, where like you have like your attack, defend, charge up sort of things, and you have to like be hitting those at the correct times to sort of hit the enemy at a rhythm.
Okay, I like that. That it's a rhythm game, but it's not so much like, it's not like, you know, the Kingdom Hearts one I played or the Like a Dragon karaoke. It's like you have to hit it in rhythm, but you like choose the button.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, is that not what Dark Souls is?
Yeah. And like the enemy that you're fighting might have like a pattern or whatever, and in like boss fights it might change based on like the phase of the music, right?
Okay,
and so you have to sort of put together those patterns and respond to them. correctly.
I really think there's something nice to do with the Bunraku puppets here, because they've got, like, the shamisen, taiko drums. Like, there's some, like, musical elements that we could bring in.
Sure.
Maybe. Not that I'm going to pretend to be an expert here. However, I think there's something we could play with.
Gotta do some research. As the director of Kowloon High School Chronicle says, you can start planning your game, but then you have to do lots of research.
Shocking.
I like this. Somebody can steal this and make this if they want. That'd be okay.
Yeah. I would play this. I would like someone to steal and make my Souls-like that has some more rhythm game trappings.
Yeah.
I really think this is where we need to go. Some people need to start taking Souls-likes and, like, remixing a little bit. I know, everybody loves FromSoft. Everybody loves the exact template they've built, and I know that it feels silly to not use the exact template they've built when everybody loves it, but you could make this a surefire hit. Well, on that high note, literally, listeners, thanks for tuning in for another episode of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
Do you agree with me that rhythm games should be added to the Souls-like category on Wikipedia? List of Souls-like video games. I don't know if that's a page, but it should be if it's not. Have you played Kowloon High School Chronicle? Should I bite the bullet and play it? 80 hours is a lot of hours. There's too many games. Are there too many games, listeners? Could they have marketed Kowloon High School Chronicle better to better take advantage of Persona Mania? When will Persona Mania bubble pop? If you have thoughts of any of this, when will the Souls-like bubble pop? If you have thoughts on this or anything else this week, hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games in the hat, which Emma's about to pull our next 2 games from, and read our blog, featuring long-running series Click Like Boyfriend and Split Screen. But most importantly, if you enjoy the show, you should subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, wherever you can find podcasts. Subscribe and listen to Talk This. It's Emma's side quest next week.
Yep, we'll see. It'll be a review of the Cloud Big Dipper Insomnia cookies.
We've done product placement in games. I'm not sure we've done, like, out of game. Like, game placement on products.
Yeah. we'll think about it.
Yeah, if anyone wants to sponsor Emma's Insomnia cookies order, let us know.
Alright, so for our old game, we're going to be talking about Shadows of the Damned. And for our new game, we're going to be talking about Immortals of Avium.
I don't think I've heard of either of those games, so it's going to be a great one.
Woohoo!
Going in totally blind.
Well, do you want to sign us off, Madelyn? Tell us a lie. No, do whatever you want.
This week, I don't hope that you slowly befriend your local animal so that it lets you pet it.